Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Bears Talk Today. Now, for today's episode, Justin will not be joining us, so it's just me today. You're stuck with just me. And we got another doozy to talk about. Yesterday on Monday Night Football, in front of a national audience, the Bears embarrassed themselves 30-12 against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, there's a lot you could say about this game, and there's a lot you could say about this season, but I thought the Bears were so poetic in the way that they played yesterday. Like, it just encapsulated everything that the season has been, right? They gave you a little bit of hope, and they just immediately ripped it away and did the worst thing possible, right? The Bears yesterday, several times, had the Vikings backed up, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 17 even. Vikings would convert all of those. The Bears on offense would have a few nice plays, and Caleb would look like he was in rhythm, and then the left tackle, a rookie, third-round pick, just gets obliterated by Jonathan Grenard. He took him to the woodshed all night last night. It was pretty embarrassing. Caleb gets strip sacked or ends up parallel on the ground somehow. It was a very embarrassing night. And I think Thomas Brown, I do feel bad for him at this point because it's clear that he's kind of in over his head. I talked about it a couple weeks on the show. Like, if I was promoted to CEO of the company I work for, I would not do a good job. Like, I'm not ready to be a CEO, okay? So his rapid, I guess, promotions were not necessarily because he was so good at his job. It was because everybody above him was so bad at his job. And so now I guess he has to kind of suffer the consequences well. When you look at this team, the Bears, there's just so many flaws, right? Their offensive line at this point is atrocious. Again, they trotted out their rookie third-round pick at left tackle, and he was just embarrassing. It was bad. Darnell Wright wasn't good yesterday either. He got beat several times on the edge. The interior of the offensive line couldn't get any push, right? They couldn't run the ball on 4th and 1 a couple of times. They just couldn't get it. DeAndre Swift had very little running lanes. It's embarrassing. The receivers yesterday were dropping passes. It was just an all-around poor effort for the Chicago Bears. And again, it just goes to show the difference between the Bears and the difference between a lot of the good teams in the NFL. The Bears don't do the simple things correctly, right? The Bears, they blow their assignments. They don't tackle well. They don't catch the ball. They don't look the ball. They don't pass block. They can't run. There's only so many things you can do when all of these elements of playing football are going bad for the Chicago Bears. And again, is that coaching? Is that the players? I think it's a mix of both. And I think we're at the point now where we have to really take a deep dive into what players are going to survive into next season, because this season has been just a complete disaster. They have now lost 8 straight games. They have not won a game on United States soil since October 6th. We are a week away from Christmas, by the way. And so this Bears team, on all levels, has just completely faltered. We were at one point 4-2, looking like we were going to be a wild card team. Then Jaden Daniels completes the Hail Mary, and again, that broke our season. You can look back. You could have said it at the time. You definitely look back. That is what broke the Chicago Bears. They were a flawed team before that. They had issues. I never really liked Matt Eberflus even before that game. Don't get me wrong. But that specific instance broke the Chicago Bears. It broke their 2024 season, and it broke the rookie year of Caleb Williams. Now, speaking of Caleb Williams, I did want to talk about one thing that I thought was very interesting. And it's a connection that I hadn't made up until this point. But hearing Troy Aikman talk about Caleb Williams yesterday and compare Caleb Williams to himself. Troy Aikman, as you guys might know, was the first overall pick in the 1989 draft by the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Troy Aikman went on to win 3 Super Bowls, become a Hall of Famer. He was part of the triplets with Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and that is all great. What people forget, though, is that in his rookie year, the Cowboys went 1-15, and Troy Aikman specifically went 0-11. Now, another element to this equation that people forget is that Jimmy Johnson, who was the Cowboys coach, had just come from Miami. Jimmy Johnson also took Miami's quarterback in the 4th round that year, and he had won a game before Troy Aikman did. So there was all this drama, all of this, they're 1-15. They traded Herschel Walker. I wonder how that turned out, right? And then Troy Aikman obviously was able to rebound very well and go on to win so many Super Bowls. But other than the fact that they also both transferred out of Oklahoma to California-based schools, I do want to say that I think there are a lot of parallels here. Not that I think the Bears are going to win 3 Super Bowls in the next 5 years. We can just win a playoff game first. Like, let's, baby steps. But I do think that this is going to be the absolute floor for Caleb Williams. Like, the way he's playing right now, we can all admit he's not playing like a number one overall pick. He's struggling, right? He's not seeing the field particularly well. The offense just doesn't seem to be clicking. And that does fall partially on his shoulders, but it also falls on the coaching staff and the offensive line and the receivers, right? So I think when you look at Caleb Williams, I still see a guy who can be a spectacular quarterback in this league. Like, I don't have any hope lost for Caleb Williams specifically. Now, somebody that I have lost faith in partially is Ryan Poles. I have been, I would say, a pretty adamant defender of Ryan Poles up until probably 3 to 4 weeks ago. And, when they fired Matt Eberflus, I thought, okay, Ryan Poles, he's going to be the guy. He's going to, hire the next coach. He's going to be in charge of the retooling of the Chicago Bears. And then I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, does he really deserve that opportunity? Because if you look at all of his moves that he's made, yes, his crowning achievement is the Caleb Williams trade. Nobody could take that away. That was a phenomenal trade. But, he traded away Roquan Smith, who's an all-pro caliber linebacker, to sign Tremont Edmonds, TJ Edwards. That was a bad move. He let David Montgomery walk in free agency. That was a bad move. Then he signed DeAndre Swift. So if you think about it, they basically swapped David Montgomery for DeAndre Swift, which was a bad move, right? They let Darnell Mooney walk, even though, he scored 0 points in fantasy yesterday and completely sold my playoffs. That's besides the point. Like, the Bears have had a lot of talented players that he has either traded or let go, and then brought in players that have not been up to par, right? Again, DeAndre Swift has not been good. Chase Claypool was not good. There have been a couple other signings that he's made. Nate Davis, who he signed on the interior offensive line, has been a disaster. So he has not made consistently enough good moves. His drafting in last year's draft, again, Caleb Williams, I still believe in. Rome Odunze, even though he completely sold that first touchdown, I still believe in. But again, you take the left tackle out of Yale, he just gets completely worked. He got abused yesterday by Jonathan Grenard. And I've talked about it in the past how Brian Flores schematically is such a good coordinator because of all of the things he throws at you, both in the blitz and the way he disguises coverages. The Vikings weren't really doing anything complex yesterday. They were rushing 4. They were saying, we're just going to win one-on-one matchups on the edge. And that's exactly what they were doing. And the Bears didn't have the intelligence to help out their tackles who were struggling. Because I guess they just don't have the personnel to do so. It just goes back to poor roster construction. And I wanted to take a look at a particular tweet that I saw yesterday that helped me to illustrate my point on Ryan Poles. So in the offseason, they went about acquiring a lot of offensive linemen, and really none of them have turned out. Doug Kramer, which, by the way, can I take a second to talk about Doug Kramer? Because why he still is the fullback at the goal line blows my mind, right? We saw the disaster against the Commanders where he fumbled the football. Okay, cool. You don't want to give him the ball anymore. But he's the backup center coming into the game. They score a touchdown, and it gets called back because he didn't report as eligible. And I think that's on both him and the coaching staff. Dude, you've been the fullback all year. You should definitely know to report as eligible, all right? Number 68 should be always reporting it as eligible. I don't care what the situation is. So that's number 1. Number 2, the coaching staff, when they put him in the game, should have said, hey, make sure you report in as eligible. It's just completely that's just, again, the Chicago Bears this year. That's how they are. They just cannot do the simple things correctly. They can't line up correctly. They can't report correctly. They jump off sides all the time. They false start. They hold. They pass interference. Every penalty in the book is just what the Bears do, and it's quite sad. So Doug Kramer, terrible. Nate Davis, terrible. Coleman Shelton, terrible. Darnell Wright, he's okay, Tevin Jenkins is a guy who I think is good in spurts, but he's hurt a lot, and, he's always kind of rebounding from his injuries. So the Bears' offensive line acquisitions over the last couple of years have been dreadful, like just dreadful. And that falls on Ryan Poles, right? Ryan Poles is a former offensive lineman. He should know what competent offensive line play looks like. And he should know the importance of competent offensive line play. And again, I'm not going to say that Rome Odunze is bad. I'm not going to say that they shouldn't have taken him. But in hindsight, the Bears would probably be better off if they would have taken a tackle at 9. Fuaga would have been a great example, right? So Ryan Poles is not exempt from criticism here. And I thought it was very interesting when towards the end of the game, when they had the camera up in the booth and they showed the Vikings GM, Kwesi. And one of the things that really just stuck out to me is his success rate on moves for the Minnesota Vikings far exceeds what Ryan Poles has been for the Bears, right? He took a chance on Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold looks like an MVP caliber player. Dallas Turner looks like a good pass rusher for the Minnesota Vikings. They signed Jonathan Grenard in free agency, who looks awesome. They let Danielle Hunter walk to the Houston Texans. Andrew Van Ginkel also been a good addition to their defense. Offensively speaking, the Jordan Addison pick, he looks like a stud. I know he didn't draft Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson's obviously good as well. But when you look at the Vikings, it's kind of a clear parallel of like good run organization with good coaching and good front office and the way that they operate versus the Bears, which have bad coaching, bad roster construction, bad personnel, bad drafting, bad contracts, etc. So I think the problem runs deeper than just, we had Matt Eberflus, he was a bad coach, we're going to find a new coach and we're going to be all good. I don't think that Ryan Poles has done enough to extend him into next year. And I say extend, not that he needs another contract, but in terms of him not being fired. Because when you're the Bears and you're in this position where you're firing Matt Eberflus, I almost think now you just want a fresh start. Get a new GM, get a new coach, make sure they're both aligned on everything, right? A lot of good teams did that. The 49ers in 2017 hired Kyle Shanahan, who brought along John Lynch to be the GM. The 49ers have been one of the most successful teams in the NFL since then. So I think the partnership of your coach and your GM is essential in order to build a long-lasting, successful team. Take the Chiefs, Andy Reid and Brett Veach. They are a package deal, okay? They work in tandem. They know what each other wants, what each other needs, what the roster needs. They have one vision, all right? Now they have an owner who lets them do it and gives them the freedom to go out and get guys and spend money and make these aggressive deals. And that's great. That's what you need. You need a kind of a partnership between your owner, your GM, and your coach. Right now, the Bears kind of have this weird thing going on with Kevin Warren, which I think is kind of a red flag because from what I've heard, a lot of guys in the industry don't like Kevin Warren. He's the former commissioner of the Big Ten. And, obviously he's got a big presence in the Midwest because he was the Big Ten commissioner. But if you guys remember, back in 2020, the COVID year, he tried to get the season canceled in college football. And that was a very unpopular decision. And, in reading some reports over the last couple of weeks, the Bears maybe were going to be interested in Jim Harbaugh. But with Kevin Warren involved with the Bears, that was not going to happen because Jim Harbaugh was Michigan's coach in the Big Ten. Kevin Warren wanted to cancel the year. And it was just kind of I guess they don't like each other. And if I'm Jim Harbaugh, why would I like Kevin Warren? Like, he tried to get rid of a whole year of football. So right now, it's some dark times for the Bears. I won't lie. There's a lot to fix at House Hall. There's a lot to fix, and I guess that will get into my questions. That was kind of not so much a game recap as it was a rant about the Bears and the Vikings. But I mean, truthfully, to recap the game, I think would be a waste of time. The Bears got blown out. They looked like they were in a different league than the Minnesota Vikings. It wasn't close. 30-12 tells you they lost by 3 scores, which is bad on its own. But you really look at the game and you're like, well, the Bears probably should have lost by like 24, right? Because they kind of scored a garbage time touchdown. So there's really no sense. The Bears have been officially eliminated from the playoffs. I mean, we've been saying this for weeks that the season was over. The season is officially over. They're not making the playoffs. So to win a game at this point, I guess really serves no purpose other than to worsen our draft pick, which, as fans, we do pay attention to. I understand the players and coaches don't care about a draft pick, but the fans do, and maybe the front office does. So that's, I guess, the goal of the Bears this year is just to keep improving the draft pick, right? That's the goal of every Bears season in December is, let's lose all these games and let's get a better draft pick. And it's just so frustrating that come the end of the year, the Bears fans, they have to look forward to April and not February, right? We're looking forward to the draft in April, not the Super Bowl in February. And for majority of my lifetime, you kind of secretly wish that the Bears lose these games late in December again so they get a better draft pick so they can, improve their position. And I want so badly to be excited to watch Bears football in December. I want so badly to, really anticipate a Bears versus Packers game in Week 18 at Lambeau Field. That could determine if we make the playoffs or if we win the North or, God forbid, get the 1 seed. That hasn't happened in a long time. 2018, again, offered me a little glimpse of hope. I had hope for a little bit in 2018. But I knew that we were limited with Mitch Trubisky. I knew that. I did. But I was enjoying the ride in 2018, and then, ever since then, it hasn't really lived up to any expectations. And I mentioned this last week too. Like, everybody wants to make fun of the Jets. The Jets haven't made the playoffs since 2010. Ha, you're the Jets. You haven't made the playoffs since 2010. Well, guess what? The Bears have made the playoffs once since 2010. They made it in 2018, and they didn't win a playoff game. So, as far as we're concerned, we're the NFC version of the Jets. Kind of always have high expectations and always disappoint. All right, let's get into some of these questions. So, I want to dive deeper into Ryan Poles as the general manager and talk about what his future looks like in the Chicago Bears organization. So, I would imagine that Ryan Poles is not the GM come January. And the reason I say that is because if you have been the general manager for 3 years and the Bears have won, I believe in 2022 they won 4 games. Last year they won 5 games. This year they've won 4 games. You have what? 12 wins in 3 years? 12, 13, 14 wins in 3 years? That's an indictment on you, Ryan Poles. That is an indictment on you. The moves you made have not worked out. The contracts you've given out, you gave big money to Montez Sweat. He has like 2.5, 3 sacks this year. You gave big money, the largest contract in the history of the Chicago Bears, to DJ Moore. DJ Moore has been massively disappointing this year. You gave big money to Jalen Johnson. That one has worked out. I do agree. I think Jalen Johnson has been excellent as well. But the problem is that the guy that you gave all that money to ended up screaming and dog cussing your head coach on Thanksgiving because he blew the game. So even though I think the player's been good and the contract, is reasonable for a player of his production level, does he want to be a Chicago Bear anymore? I mean, he's talked about it. He's been on a losing team every single year he's been in the league. He has not had any success on the Chicago Bears. And I can understand, as a man who is as good at his job as Jalen Johnson, that would be highly frustrating. That would be so frustrating. I remember, Jalen Ramsey years ago on the Jaguars when the kind of Jacksonville kind of thing ended, and he wanted to be on a good team. He was sick of being on the Jaguars who sucked, and the Rams gave up 2 first-round picks to get him. I almost wonder if the Bears would consider moving Jalen Johnson this offseason, again, just to retool, just to accumulate more draft assets, because the more that I sit here and look at this roster, the more that I think that they got major issues. And I talked about it earlier in the year where I said, I think this Bears team, they got good players. They're a pretty good team. I think, honestly, the Bears have 5 or 6 good players, and the rest are probably replaceable, right? I think Caleb Williams is good. I still believe in DJ Moore, Jalen Johnson. I like Montez Sweat, even though he's been disappointing this year. But, I mean, all of the offensive linemen I think are replaceable. Roma Dunze hasn't shown anything yet. Cole Kmet's a good tight end. He's not anything special by any means. The defensive line, Dexter, I would say, is also good. But other than that, Darrell Taylor, DeMarcus Walker, Zach Pickens, I don't know, all those guys are replaceable to me. Jaquan Brisker's fine. He's okay. So to me, this roster just needs major reinforcements. So they need to nail this draft. And Poles has not done that so far. He has not been a guy where you can say he is going to nail this draft. His scouting, his knowledge of the draft is on point. He is going to get us some superstars. That's not been his game so far. And again, in a season where the Bears, they're going to need so much reinforcements, both on the coaching end and on the personnel end. Is Ryan Poles the guy you want to put in charge to do both of those? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think that leads to another conversation of, should the Bears retool or should the Bears rebuild? Now, for those of you who don't know the difference, retooling is essentially just kind of like getting reinforcements, adding more players to your team, which I guess you could say every team retools, but the Bears would, I guess, retool and replace some guys at certain positions. Rebuilding is kind of just selling the farm and saying, hey, Jalen Johnson's up for sale. Montez Sweat up for sale. DJ Moore's up for sale. We're just going to acquire as many draft picks and as many young players as possible and just restart. Press the big red giant restart button. And the Bears kind of did that not too long ago. So we could be headed towards another one, unfortunately. But I think a retool is necessary for the Bears. I don't think they need to press the big red restart button just yet. I think retooling is the way to go. Again, get more good young players, draft better, sign players in free agents who actually want to be on the team. Looking at you, Nate Davis. So and then again, the other important thing is to get the right head coach. Now, I am adamant. I am pounding the table for Ben Johnson out of Detroit. Ben Johnson, to me, is everything that the Bears need. I think he is an excellent, excellent offensive mind. And we see that. That's the trend in the NFL, okay? If you want to be a Super Bowl caliber team, 99% of the time, you have to have an offensive head coach. And I'm not saying you can't have a defensive head coach or you can't have a CEO-style head coach, but when you have Caleb Williams, who is the lifeblood of your franchise, this team will go as far as Caleb Williams will take us. You need to invest everything you can into him. And so Ben Johnson, to me, is the guy. Now, I saw a report earlier today. Credibility is questionable, so, don't sue me. But due to all of the injuries on the Detroit Lions, it is possible that the Lions don't make it to the Super Bowl. And because of that, then Ben Johnson then runs it back again with Detroit to try to win the Super Bowl in 2025. Keep the core together and try to win a Super Bowl. Now, I have a couple thoughts on this. Number one, I don't think that would be smart. And the reason I don't think it would be smart is the NFL is the not for long league, right? Not for long. And the reason I say that is because right now Ben Johnson is arguably the hottest coaching commodity in this upcoming cycle, as was he last year with the 2023 cycle. We have seen coaches in the past who have been hot topic names for potential head coaching hires that have just fallen off the map, and then they never took that coaching job. They stayed back and were a coordinator, and then they're gone. They never ended up becoming a head coach because, again, in the NFL, things are so variable. Things change so much from year to year. One year, your boy genius. The next year, you're getting fired because your side of the ball is 25th in the NFL. And if you want a recent example of this, it would be Lou Anarumo, who was the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. And a couple of years ago, when he was beating the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game and he was sticking it to Josh Allen in the divisional round, people were like, Lou Anarumo, this guy is going to be a head coach. He is awesome. He is going to, turn some team around. And he stuck around. He came back to the Bengals. Tried to win a Super Bowl. And this year, the Bengals defense is awful. And honestly, their defense has sabotaged their whole season. Joe Burrow has been playing like an MVP. Jamar Chase has been phenomenal. Their defense has let them down tremendously. Now, not only will Lou Anarumo not become a head coach next year, he might even be fired as the defensive coordinator. Now, I say all of this to illustrate the point that in the NFL, you need to take advantage of your leverage, right? Ben Johnson has a lot of teams that are going to be calling his phone come January. The Jets, the Saints, the Bears, the Raiders, I'm sure we'll call him. The Jaguars will call him. Every team just about that has a head coaching vacancy will check in on Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, I think, would be really dumb to not take advantage of that leverage to get a head coaching job. Not only get a head coaching job, but get a head coaching job that pays him lucratively. And he could fight for personnel power. He could fight for whatever he wants. He's got all the leverage right now. I fear that if he goes back to Detroit and they have a disappointing season next year, that he might lose some of that leverage, right? And he's young. I'm not saying he'll never be a head coach, but I do think that he needs to take advantage of his opportunities. Now, circling this around, see, I don't have Justin here to break up my little rant, so I'm just kind of going on a tangent here. Circling this around to the Chicago Bears, they are the best job available. Now, I know I've spent this whole episode talking about how bad they are and how many players they need and Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren. None of that matters because of Caleb Williams, right? We saw the Chargers last year, right? Terrible team, awful. They lost to the Raiders. I think it was like 63-7. It was like a Madden score. It was terrible. Chargers were very talentless. They were old. They were aging. Their owner is historically terrible. The Spanos family, they're cheap. They get in the way. They've got some questionable legal stuff, which I won't say on live television. From that perspective, the Chargers' job was not very attractive at all. But you know what made that job attractive? They had Justin Herbert, who, I don't know if you watch football, he's pretty good. Jim Harbaugh, who was, I think, one of the top candidates in last year's class, took that Chargers job with a smile because he had Justin Herbert. He said, I can fix the rest. All right, we'll get a new GM. I'll bring in my coordinators. We'll fix that. And the Chargers are significantly better. Overnight, significantly better than they were last year. They've more than doubled their win total. And the Chargers are still a flawed roster, right? They don't have a pass catcher. Their defense is old. They have trouble on the interior of the offensive line. They're not winning the Super Bowl this year. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. They're not going to win the Super Bowl in 2024. But with some smart drafting, a few good personnel moves, they can be a real contender in 2025 and beyond. Because of Jim Harbaugh. He turned that team around overnight, essentially. And again, the reason he wanted to take the Chargers job is because they had Justin Herbert, who is a special quarterback. And I believe the same thing about Caleb Williams. He is a special quarterback. Now, the difference is that we haven't seen him be an all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber player like the Chargers had with Justin Herbert. But I think everybody sees the potential with Caleb Williams. And I think if you're Ben Johnson, you would love to run your offense with the quarterback as talented as Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is more talented than Jared Goff. Not saying he's better. Everybody back up. All the Lions fans who watch this, back up. He's not better than Jared Goff yet. He is more talented than Jared Goff. He's got a better arm. He's a better athlete. I would argue that he's also probably, able to extend plays and be a playmaker more so than Jared Goff did, especially now in Detroit. So if you're Ben Johnson, you could pick between Caleb Williams, or you can pick between the Saints have Derek Carr, the Jets have 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, the Jaguars have Trevor Lawrence, who's been massively disappointing, the Raiders have Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. To me, it's not really a choice, right? To me, the choice is clear that any prominent offensive coach would want Caleb Williams to be their quarterback. And I believe that Ben Johnson wants the same. Okay. Sorry, I went on a whole rant about that. Again, I need Justin here to break these up. He's really good at keeping me on one track. So I'm not going to talk about the draft yet because the draft is one of those things where it's funny, but even though the Bears lost, they didn't improve their draft position just because of how really bad the bottom third in the NFL is this year. I mean, this is like one of the worst years in terms of discrepancy I can remember in the NFL. Like, you have 6 or 7 teams that are just terrible. I mean, just awful. And so the Bears, they're going to be in a little competition here to see how many games they could lose, how quickly to get that draft pick better. Because even if they go 4-13, they might only pick like 7th or 8th. They might not get a top 5 pick, which is kind of depressing. But regardless, before I head out, I do want to say a couple of things. Or before we talk about the Lions game, I do want to say a couple of things. Number one, there is hope. There is hope for the Chicago Bears. All right, the NFL is the league of parity. It doesn't take a lot in the NFL to turn your team around. You have to do a couple of things. You have to get a quarterback. Bears got one. You have to get the head coach right. Bears don't got one. And you have to hit on a couple drafts. All right, hit on some free agent deals. Realistically, it's not that hard. Now, when your organization is as inept as the Bears has been, it becomes a lot more difficult. But listen, guys, a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, okay? A broken clock is right twice a day. Eventually, the Bears will stumble themselves into some good players consistently, and they'll sign a guy off the street who is a stud, and they'll give a contract to a guy who really just fits the Bears. Caleb Williams will work out, okay? We got to have hope. There's no need to just sit here and just wallow in self-pity and think, oh, the Bears. Because guess what, guys? It can't get any worse, okay? It's only up from here. The Bears have lost 8 straight games. They've tied their franchise record. This is a franchise that is over 100 years old, and they are right now currently the worst they've ever been in terms of a losing streak. It won't get worse. So we just got to look up from here, okay? It will. And again, I would liken this to, building a house, right? Do the Bears have a roof? Do they have, air conditioning or a functional staircase? No, they don't. But they have a foundation laid down. They have a foundation. Now they need some contractors to come in and build this place brick by brick, but they have a foundation set up, all right? The whole house was not washed away by sea. We have a foundation still. And if we can build off of that foundation, I do believe the Bears could turn this thing around. Now, is that me coping? Is that me being delusional? Maybe. But like I said, there's no sense in wallowing in self-pity because it literally cannot get worse. So let's just hope for the best. All right. That's my little optimistic twist on this whole episode that I've been talking about. Let's talk about the upcoming game because, unfortunately, the Bears are not playing Madden. We can't just skip to the end of the season, so we got a few more games to talk about. The Lions are coming to Chicago next week. They are currently 6.5-point favorites. Now, there's a couple of things to talk about when you're looking at the Detroit Lions. Number one, just their injury luck has just been so bad this year. They lost David Montgomery for the season. They lost Aleem McNeil for the season. That was just last week. Carlton Davis has also been hurt. Alex Anzalone has been out for a significant portion, might miss the whole year. Aiden Hutchinson might come back if they make it to the Super Bowl. They're decimated right now. There's really no other way to put it. They are a practice squad team on defense, essentially, because of how many injuries they've had. In the big year, in the year of our Lord 2024, if you're trotting out Jamal Adams as your starting safety, you got something really, really wrong. And the Lions, to see Jamal Adams just get stiff-armed into oblivion by James Cook was quite entertaining as a guy who likes the Seahawks because he's sabotaged. Anyways. The Lions' defense is in shambles. Their offense obviously lost a huge piece in David Montgomery. So you're thinking, is there hope for the Bears? This game's in Chicago. I looked it up. It's supposed to be anywhere from like 20 to 30 degrees. It's going to be colder. Does this give the Bears a chance? No. Let me tell you why. So the Lions are currently in a dogfight for not only the number one seed in the NFL or the NFC, but also for the NFC North Division title. They're 12-2. The Eagles are 12-2, right on their tail for the 1 seed. And the Vikings are also 12-2 on their tail for both the North and the 1 seed. The Lions are going to be playing highly motivated for the rest of the season. They cannot slip up. They cannot trip up. The Eagles and Vikings are both hot on their tail. And if you want to talk about momentum, I think the Vikings and Eagles both have more momentum right now. The Eagles, just dominated the Steelers. And they're a lot of people's favorite to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Now, if you're the Lions, I cannot overstate how essential the number 1 seed is for them, okay? They need the number 1 seed. They are not going to be able to go into Philadelphia or, God forbid, they have to go into Minnesota or whatever. But Minnesota's not bad. They are not going into Philadelphia and beating the Eagles in the playoffs. They're not doing it, right? With that environment, with that weather, with Philly, they're not doing it. Okay, so their path to the Super Bowl with all these injuries has to be through Detroit. The Lions understand that they cannot take the Bears lightly because the Bears almost came back and beat them on Thanksgiving. That would have been a really embarrassing loss for the Lions. Now, they got lucky because Matt Eberflus forgot he had a timeout, apparently. And I honestly, that was a blessing in disguise because that was the final straw in the cap of Matt Eberflus as the Chicago Bears head coach. But truthfully, the Lions, I think, understand that this Bears team really had them on the ropes at the end of that game. Really, really did. So they're not going to take the Bears lightly. They understand that this game is important for their season because they cannot afford to lose this game. And again, yes, they're banged up, but they still have a phenomenal play caller, Ben Johnson. They still have a great defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jahmyr Gibbs had an awesome game last week. Jared Goff has been playing lights out. So I don't know if there's much hope for the Bears, unfortunately. I don't see it. This Bears team, they've just looked so inept over the past several weeks. They can't line up correctly. They don't know their assignments. And again, that just goes back to Thomas Brown, I think, just being in over his head. And I do feel bad for him. I'm not gonna sit here and criticize him greatly because, like I said, if my company named me the CEO tomorrow, I would probably have similar levels of success. All right, I'd be getting blown out every week. So, if you really think about it, the Bears are in a position right now where they just cannot. They just can't function as a team. Like this is like watching a bad college team right now. Like, yes, there's a few good players. It just doesn't make a good team. So give me the Lions in this one. I don't know, probably 24-10. I think they do cover the 6.5, which being 6.5-point favorites on the road is quite depressing for the Bears. I look forward to the day when the Bears are 6.5-point favorites on the road. And it's not looking good in Chicago, ladies and gentlemen. But I think again we have to keep hope, because the Bears, it can't get worse, right? It can't get worse. Even though I said that after Mark Trestman, and then John Fox went, what was it, 13-40 or something like that, and then Matt Nagy was good for a year and then kind of fell off, and then Matt Eberflus came in and was also bad. So maybe it can't get worse, but I'm choosing to believe that finally something will click at House Hall. Okay, I'm sick of hearing stories from my mom about how the Bears were good. I want to see stories of the Bears being good. I want to watch the Bears dominate the National Football League, because 1985 was great, but for the love of God, can we please do something in my lifetime that makes me proud to be a Bears fan? All right, I'm sick of it. The only thing I have to hold on to is they went to the Super Bowl in 2006. Devin Hester was pretty good, and Brian Urlacher was great, and yeah, that's about it in my lifetime. I'm 22 years old in my lifetime, and it's sad. It really is sad. We just gotta hope for change. So I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you guys for watching. Sorry it was just me today. I know you probably had to turn down your volume hearing my voice for these 35 minutes, but if you guys enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe. Really, really appreciate it. Again, episode every single week after the game. We will also be doing an episode at some point when the Bears hire their coach, probably, I would say, middle January, maybe early February. But that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Peace out. Thank you, Alex.